Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Surdentity Podcast. I am your hostess, Elizabeth Dewar Anthony, and this morning I have with me Dr. Jeff Buske,
What's
and
up?
he from Granbury, Texas,
Yes.
and he's a dentist. But he's also a mentor. He's mentoring men in dentistry. He's a man of faith and he's very bold about it. And I don't know if if I can drop the word prophet, but because what is a prophet but somebody that speaks the truth? And
Yeah.
the truth is a lot of times not what other people want to hear. And the the quote that you put up about that made me want to reach out to you is you're either building your empire or creating your prison.
Yes.
And dude, I'm like, wow. And I want to talk. Well, first of all, I could talk about God all day. Second of all, I want to talk about the prisons that we create for
Sure.
ourselves. So go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me on as a guest. First and foremost, I appreciate that and appreciate, anytime we have an opportunity to communicate and to express ourselves and really have an opportunity to elevate those that have not, get the opportunity to listen to this and check in with us. Thank you for what you're doing. That's the first and foremost, one of the most amazing parts of it, because it does. It takes a lot of courage to put yourself out there. It takes a lot of courage to speak this and your truth into the world, right? And so here's the thing that I have found, though. I thought about this, and you brought it up, is that I've come to realize that wherever the truth is where God is, and for me. And
Mhm.
so, and then where God is, then transformation can occur or has an opportunity to be present.
Yeah.
So when I look at things for myself, then I've got to first and foremost get honest with myself and look at the man in the mirror, or the woman in the mirror, if you're a woman listening to this, and get really absolutely clear and honest with, okay, here's where I'm at. And you might like what you see and you might not. And that either way is okay. You're right where you're supposed to be.
Mm.
That's the biggest thing. We're right where we're supposed to be because we're where we are due to our choices, due to our actions or our lack of actions. Wherever we're at is where we're at, and that's okay. The good thing is if we don't like it, there's nobody better on the planet to change it than you. That's the best part of it. So when we can come in and start to look at things that way from a point of facts and from a point of truth, now we have an opportunity to actually create something that is not based in fiction or fantasy.
Yeah.
We're just diving into the new year right now, right? So
Mhm.
this is a big time for, all kinds of New Year's, what I've made my New Year's revolution. And so the problem is that many of those things fall by the wayside, right?
Yep.
And so within a month or two, a lot of times they're gone, and we
Yep.
haven't either written them down or we just don't go back to them. But it's been my experience, and what I like to do and what I train the men on, that I coach and that I mentor and everything, is that let's just start with the basic facts of where we are today,
Mhm.
and then let's start to look at where we want to go, and then let's come up with the obstacles or hurdles getting in the way, and then let's put a plan together around it. It's very simple, but we've got systems and processes to do it.
Mhm.
But what I've also come to realize is that when we just jump to, here's where I think I want to be, and we haven't
Mhm.
taken the time to examine the facts,
Yep.
then everything that we create is usually fiction or fantasy. Like if you're going like, well, I want to have $10 million in the bank by the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody would like to have that, maybe except for billionaires. But
Yeah. Right.
but the thing is that if we're not based in our current reality and we don't necessarily have the capacity to do that, then it's all fantasy. And why are we just going to waste the time? So let's get clear on where we are. So then
Mhm.
that way we can actually get to somewhere that is exciting. And I don't want to say that it's we play what we call the impossible games. It's just like just on the other side of what's possible. So you stretch, like you stretch a rubber band to get there. And that's what creates some of the fun out of it. And everything that I like to do, I like to gamify things. So I like to gamify my life because it just makes it a lot more fun that way.
Wow. Wowie wow. So there's so much there to talk about. Uh the thing I was thinking that sprung to my mind, first of all, was, in recovery circles, we have the 3 A's: awareness,
Mhm.
acceptance, and action.
Yes.
So, awareness is first. And how many of us are just walking around with no awareness at all? And without that, that's like being in that prison you're talking about. That
Yes.
that prison of ignorance, or blindness. That
I think
prison,
there's so many people are walking around asleep nowadays,
yeah,
unfortunately.
asleep. And you know they don't mean to, they don't know, you don't know
Yeah,
what you don't know, so they
that's
don't
right.
know that they're asleep. And just like, you know uh when Saul had this, the scales fell off his eyes, right? uh you know uh, that awareness can come like bam, or
Yes.
it can come
Bits at
slowly.
a time. Absolutely.
And I know for me, so my challenge has always been, I have tremendous faith, I believe in God, I love God. My challenge is, I love God, but I don't necessarily trust. I don't want to bother God. I don't want to bother God for me. Okay. God's busy with other people. And, it's my job to help other people using God's strength. But for me personally, well, it's okay. I got this. What do you think about that?
Man, you know what? And I think that that is a very common thought for a lot of individuals. I think that, you're like, well, why would God want to listen to me? Or what is, there's so many big things happening in the world. God surely has to have, more important things to measure or to do than to just take care of little old me, right? That's a very
Right.
common thought. And I was thinking about this the other day. I was thinking about it from the perspective that, like, you know, I love it. And like every day I'm reading in the Bible every day. I love it. That's the first thing I do when I get up in the morning. It starts my day well. And I thought about this, and even with the men that I coach and that I mentor, and I thought about, what do I really want as far as like spirituality goes, and in incorporating God into my mentoring and my coaching. And I thought, I don't need to sit here and be one who's able to quote scripture. I think it's magical when people can do that, and that's fantastic. But that's not what I need to look at doing. I sat there and I thought about it. I thought, what is the real scenario that I want to look at
Mm-hmm.
drawing somebody into?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was very simple. It was along the lines of like, well, you are involved in reading your scripture every day. And what you're doing is you're really allowing individuals to see through what you're doing and the men that you coach that I want to be able to just to teach people to have a conversation with God, just like you and I
Yes.
are talking today. Just
Yeah.
easy conversation, like between friends, and having that type of conversation. Because I don't know, in my mind, I had this whole thing made up that it has to be look a certain way, that you have to pray a certain way, and it
Right.
has to, be very eloquent in my conversation. And the reality is that God just wants us to be able to be in good communion with Him.
Oh my
And
God, yes. So I liken it to a wrestling match. Okay, it's a tag team. So I'm in the middle of the ring getting my butt kicked, and God is over there. He's like, dude, he's got his hand out. He's like, make me tag, and I don't. And I'm like,
yes.
oh, but I'm complaining that I'm getting my ass kicked. And God's like, that's all God wants is for me
Yes.
to make the tag. Oh,
Yes. I think, it's interesting because man, for so much of my life, I have tried to do it alone.
Yeah.
And, I grew up Catholic. I'll just share that with you. So I got to experience a lot of Catholic guilt and shame,
Hmm.
and everything. And it's, I have a very different outlook. I think there's a very big difference between religion and spirituality. And
Absolutely.
I just, the way that I operate now, I am closer to God than I've ever been in my entire life. And a big part of that was along the lines of just coming to the realization that I can communicate with God any way that I choose to. I don't choose to put God in a box.
Hmm.
I mean, he is an amazing God. Like, he can handle all of me and
Yeah.
all of my craziness. And at the same time, to your point, being able to tag him in and ask for his support and ask for
Yeah.
his guidance, because there's much of my life that I tried to do alone, and I realized, like, the weight of that, carrying the weight of that is overwhelming.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
God wants us to be, share that yoke with him, and to
Yes.
allow him to come in and support us. And when we can have faith in that way of having a deep belief in something so strongly that just has not yet come to fruition, I think that that is, and just knowing that it will, and relying on God that it will, that is exactly what he wants us to see.
Hmm.
you know, and and he wants us to lay everything at his feet. All the good, all the bad, wherever we are, and then just look for, okay, God, what would you like me to do? And just be
Oh,
directed.
you know what? So I love that. And what I'm thinking is lay everything. So I have this shame, right? And I don't want to I don't want to show the bad stuff, even though God already knows. But I
Right.
think I'm like fooling God that, like, oh, God doesn't know about this. Of course, God knows about it. But
Yes.
it's up to me to bring that forward and say,
Yes.
"Do a God, please." Or sometimes I call God, dude, you gotta
Yes.
help me with this. But that's dude, I am having a spiritual experience right now.
I
Um,
love it.
it's me. I don't ask. I
Yeah.
don't put it down. Wow, what is up with
Well,
that?
what's interesting too is, like, I the part of the frameworks that we teach and everything, we have some tools in there, and one of the best tools that I have is called the stack. And I want you to think of, like, the stack is like a series of questions that we have, and we have all kinds of different stacks. We have, like, angry stacks, frustration stacks, gratitude stacks, appreciation stacks, sad, all kind, like, we've got a ton of different stacks to take an individual through a series of questions that allow them to see a
Mm,
different perspective on
mm-hmm.
things. And one of the most fun stacks that we have that I do very frequently is, we got two. We got a Bible stack, which I love, and then we've got a prayer stack. Now, the Bible stack, I do that every day because I take what I read in there and then I interpret that as to, like, what does that mean for me? I think
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest things, is that's missing in part of religion is the current application of how we're going to take what we're doing or what we're hearing or what we're seeing and put it into our application of how am I going to apply that in my life daily.
Yes.
I
Yes.
love going to church, but I don't go
Mm-hmm.
to church all the time. And the way that I used to operate is, I would go to church, I feel like I get my God or my Jesus on, and then I'd leave church and I'd leave God or Jesus there.
Yes.
And I was like, wait a second, that's kind of backwards, right? So now I look at it from the different perspective. But inside of this prayer stack that I want to come back to, the cool thing is there's four sections that each one just says, I want God to know. And just like what we were talking about, that's where I just lay out my truth at his feet, and it's so freeing. And then get to the last section of dear God, and that's like my open letter to God. And that's where I'm asking for his guidance. That's where I'm saying, God, what do you want me to see here? What do you want me to hear? What do you want me to change or course correct or pivot? And then I just listen and just create that space. But that's what I was talking about. Like, my target in any type of spirituality for anybody that I'm coaching or anything like that is, look, I don't tell you what you need to believe or not. If you want to believe, in something else, light, universe, I really don't care. If you have a belief in something that's bigger than you, that's fantastic. For me, it's God. But
Mm-hmm.
in that realm, what I'm looking for is I want to create the opportunity so that you know that you have something that can be bigger than you that's pulling you forward. And that's kind of like a vision too. Like when you create a vision for yourself or for your company or for your dental practice or anything like that, a
Mm-hmm.
vision's bigger than you. It's something
Mm-hmm.
that pulls you forward. It allows you to enroll your team in it, to your patients in it, and it becomes something greater than just something about you.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at that, that's how you start to create impact.
Wow.
But when you partner that with God, your impact amplifies significantly.
Amazing. So it's like you're plugging into the circuit board, right? You're getting the power. Wow. And
Yes.
as I listening to you, I was just gonna kind of ask you, do you so you mentor men from all different religious backgrounds, and
Yeah.
it's not a problem because
No.
it's about the spirit. It's not about
Yes.
the religion.
Correct.
And
Correct.
I've been in recovery for going on 28 years, and it's the same
Congratulations.
thing. It's spiritual. It's not, however, whatever your conception of God is fine as
Yes.
long as you have one. And
Right.
and God is not out there. Okay, well, God is out there, but God is in here,
Yes.
and that is ultimately, oh my gosh, I have goosebumps right now. um you know it's in here. And recovery is the process of removing all that junk that's in the way of
Right.
all that learning, all that conditioning that I had growing up, that you can't depend on anybody, you got to do it by yourself, you know
Yes.
um so I got to get all that out of the way. And that self loathing, that self hatred,
Mhm.
um get that out of the way so that that light it's there already. It's there
Yes.
already.
Absolutely. I think that, parts of the way that we set ourselves up to be successful in our lives really becomes dependent upon how we go about like setting up our day, setting up our weeks, setting up our months and our years, and being very intentional like with our time. And so, for me, like one of the most important things that I'm also going to do in the morning is, yes, I'm going to read in my scripture. I'm going to take my lessons out of that. I'm going to look at how am I going to apply this in my life and then what actions am I committed to. But on top of that, then I'm also going to do some meditation, and meditation can have all kinds of different forms. To me, the only wrong way to not meditate is to not meditate,
Right, exactly.
And so, because it can look like breathing, it can look like prayer, it can look like ascension, it can be mantras. Like I said, there's all different kinds. You can have a walking meditation. It doesn't
Yeah,
have to be with your eyes closed and saying
right.
and everything
And
else.
incense and everything else, right?
So the cool thing with that is that gives me an opportunity to get myself centered and actually get out of my head and connect with just like the piece you were talking about, connect with my heart and
Hmm.
also the divinity inside of me.
Yes.
That's what I look at as far as like my meditation goes, and that's what I like to teach in that regards because now we're inviting, like I said, now we're inviting that divinity or that divine piece in
Yeah.
to the equation. And then that's what
Wow.
allows us to get centered. And then now I can go about the rest of my morning routine or what I call rituals, because rituals have a um, greater meaning than just routine. Routine kind of reminds me of like a checklist, but a ritual
Hmm.
has a bigger impact beyond just the action. And so when we can put these things into our morning, then I call it stacking W's. We want to look at how can I create W's, which are wins? How can I stack up W's while I'm at home before I leave my
Hmm.
house? Because then I've already won the day. So by the time I get to my dental practice and I'm going in, I've already won. And I'm in a much better place. I'm in a great place of power where I now can handle some of the chaotic things that are coming my way, whether that be maybe team members not getting along or upset patients. Because let's
Yes.
face it, there is no perfect practice, there's no perfect team, there's no perfect dentist either. And the fact of the matter is we've got to look at how can we manage some of this chaos through our day? How can we fight some of these fires? And at the same time, do it with clarity, and the decisions that we make operate with certainty. And I believe all that sets up from the way that you set up your morning. And
Mm-hmm.
then that morning is set up from the way that you actually start your evening to before you go to bed as
Yeah.
well. So there's a whole bunch that gets involved with that. But when you can start to get yourself into a very good place, not only spiritually, but emotionally and physically, now you're at a place of where you can go and dominate inside of your day and fulfill what I believe your soul was called to fulfill.
Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about walking into the dental practice and you know, chaos, there's so, I'm retired now from dental hygiene, but dude, I worked in every from Park Avenue to Park Bench, honey. I worked there. And Surdentity is about my attitude toward these difficult patients and
Mhm,
changing my attitude instead from one of judgment and
mhm,
victimhood, like, oh, this guy's a jerk. Well, this guy is fearful presenting as hostile because he, first of all, he can't breathe.
yeah.
And that's the thing is, so he's already coming in defensive. He's expecting to have the experience of not being able to breathe. And what do? I slam him in the chair and you need to floss your teeth. And
Yes.
so, that's, I'm I'm looking to educate my fellow professionals. But I think what I really want to do is what you and I do, is help them get to that. Like, you don't have to stress about these things if you just, you can understand a few basic things, but it's really about this. Wow.
Yes. Well, it's not only about this, it is about this. And I also think too, I'm glad that you brought that up. Like, I think nothing in this world happens without relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to your point, so the way in which we look at and create relationships inside of the practice, that becomes so important to me, with all of our patients and our clients that we serve and everything there. And it becomes part of our culture. So, a compliment that we routinely hear, which I'm super proud of, is that, you know what, like patients will express this. They'll say, you know what, the reason that I came to you guys, and one, they say, I knew you guys are going to be more expensive than most everybody else, but the reason that I chose to have my work done with you is because you guys made me feel like family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I love hearing that compliment because it lets me know that not only what I'm doing is great, but my team is allowing that to be great. They're
Yes.
supporting me, and the whole experience is a group experience, it's not just the Jeff show, and it's not just the, Granberry Nelson. It's all of these things that compound, that come through and have an opportunity. And that is something that is remarkable, but it is in creating those relationships that allow us now to have conversations that sometimes can be harder, as you were
Yes.
saying, and at the same time put somebody at ease. Now, does that mean that everybody's going to love you and everything? No, not a chance.
Right.
There's going to be patients. And does it mean that we're not going to have sometimes some butthead patients? No, that doesn't mean that. Does it mean that we might not be a butthead some days? No, it doesn't mean that, because sometimes, listen,
I'm
we're
never
all
a
we're all human, right? So we all have our days. And
right.
when you get past like creating a whole label maybe around somebody just because maybe they had a bad day, it lets you look at life differently. Like if you examine my life, I would have had a lot of bad days. And if you just made a whole label up around me based on that, it'd be a very different outlook of the way in which you may perceive me. So,
Yes.
when we can give that type of grace to other individuals, then it really opens up the door for us to have much better relationships. That does not mean that you become a doormat for people or that you let
Mm-hmm.
people walk all over you.
Right.
There is a line on things there, but the way in which we can see people is very different.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think my you know my tendency, I think sometimes is to maybe allow uh, a little bit more doormat, overstepping of what's appropriate than maybe somebody else. My
Well, I think
thing
that's
is
why
always,
boundaries are so important, right? That's
yeah.
why they're so important. And you can, you once you get to your boundary, you can just say, then you can, say, hey, you know what? That's my line.
Hmm.
And I'm not willing for that to be crossed, and it's not okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's also very true in looking at in our office too. And we call them, when we have a mishap or something goes on, we call it a training opportunity.
Hmm.
And I want you to kind of think of it maybe like this, and this might be helpful. Um, Especially when somebody crosses boundaries or lines with you and it creates an upset or a frustration or anything like that, that becomes a training opportunity. But let's also say it could be at home, it could be with your spouse or your kids. And so one thing that we teach is called compassion. I like to call it a compassionate collision. Because listen, we're going to collide all the time with people. You
Right.
know, like Elizabeth, if your worldview is different than my worldview, and we get together, we're going to butt heads kind of a little bit,
Hmm.
or the way
Hmm.
in which you see things from your self view because of your worldview. But then we have the people that like we talk and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, we're just like best friends and we could talk for hours just after 30 seconds of meeting one another. Those worldviews align, right? Does that make
Hmm.
sense? So
Yeah.
when we have though confrontations or say collisions, like let's say I have a collision with my wife, we collide all the time because she's got different points of view, so do I. And she has points of view from a woman, I have points of view from a man, and thank God we're not alike, that we have these differences. And so, but when we have a collision, it's very different than me like coming at you and coming at your face. And that becomes, oh my gosh, it can be very intense for
Yes.
people.
Yes.
And it can cause us to go take things very personally,
Yep.
and it can cause us to be very defensive.
Yes.
Now, what I love about like compassionate collision is like I'm not going to necessarily make it about you. It may be something that you're doing that I don't like or how it's impacting me or whatever. But instead of making it directly personally about you, like let's make it about, let's say it's an issue. And if this
Hmm.
represents the issue, then what I'd rather do is say, you know what, Elizabeth, like if you're a team member, say, listen, Elizabeth, gosh, I'm so happy that you're part of our team, but we've got an issue going on over here.
Hmm.
And what I would really love to do is let me stand shoulder to shoulder with you and let's attack the issue together,
Yeah.
as opposed to like me attacking you or you attacking me in return. Now
Yes.
we actually have an opportunity to attack this. Now, we may have some differences of opinion on the issue and everything there, and that's okay. But it takes a lot of that personal feeling of attack or being attacked out of it.
Yes.
When you can operate that way, it just changes how we see one another as well.
Wow. Well, my opinion on any issue that involves me is that I'm right. And
That's an
right.
easy fix,
Okay,
right?
now let's just get this straight. I'm right and you're wrong. But that I love that not attacking and looking at the issue rather than because it's really hard. I know there's a lot of people that have a very hard time being called out on a mistake because I know for me, my problem is I can't make a mistake. If I make a mistake, that means I am a mistake. And that, there's this whole cascade of blah, 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 that that goes along with it. As I continue to develop spiritually, it gets better. But
Yes.
how many people are not there? They're walking around in that mindset, in that, and so for me to try to point out, you did something wrong is like, an affront to their existence.
I'm so proud when, I'm not proud in the moment, but I'm proud of my team. Like when they came and they're like, hey, I screwed up, but they
Yeah.
own it.
Yes.
And you know what? I'll say, you know what? Thanks for owning it. Now let's look at what can we do to fix it. And
Yep.
then I have them give me some solutions so we can look at that. and there's still going to be consequences revolving around it, right? But
Hmm.
when you own it and you take that ownership, it gets you back into an integrity quickly.
Yeah.
And when you acknowledge that ownership, that shifts back your integrity, where you're back in integrity and you're like, you know what? Okay, I'm back in integrity. I'm honoring my word. And now that also allows me to say, okay, there might be consequences around there, but at least going forward, you've got maybe a new commitment on what we're going to do, which is great. Those become great training opportunities.
Hmm.
It'd be like if I told my wife that, hey, I'm going to be home at 6:15 for dinner with the family, and gosh, I'm still seeing a patient at like 6:05. There's no way I'm making it home by 6:15, right? But the minute that I know that I'm going to be breaking my word or not honoring my word, I want to let her know, hey,
Hmm.
I just want to acknowledge that I'm not going to be home at 6:15. I'll probably be home by 6:30. But I just wanted to tell you that, and I commit to being on time next time,
Yeah.
whatever that is, even when things are what we would say out of our circumstances, what we can control.
Yeah.
But when we do that, like I said, I'm at least going to honor my word, get back into integrity. Now, granted, I may have some consequences around that. I might be eating dinner alone. My dinner might be kind of cold,
Right.
and, and my cuddle time with my wife might be a little bit limited too. So there's consequences that can be around that. But the key is getting yourself back into integrity. And
Yeah.
integrity to me is about honoring your word. It's not about being your word, because when we're up to big things in life, we're going to break our word, or things are going to happen where we can't do that. But it's about honoring that. And then, just as I was saying, when we can honor our word and acknowledge where we're out of integrity and then recommit, now we can get back into integrity. And that's such an important concept. That's one of the first things that we teach inside of my mentoring is like, let's look at, we call it the code. We live by a code, and that's living by the truth, living by integrity. And when we can operate that way, life becomes very different. We operate in more of a yes and no, and not this maybe, not this
Yeah.
gray bullshit area in the middle. We operate in yes and no. And when we can start to operate in integrity, we also see productivity rise significantly with integrity.
Integrity also feels good.
It
When
does.
people are in their addiction, they don't have integrity. Their word doesn't mean a lot because they're a victim, they're a slave to their disease. So
Yeah.
one of the good things about being in recovery is my word means something today. And when I can say I'm gonna do this, and then I do it, that feels really good. And
Yes.
being able to help somebody restore that, or even maybe have it for the first time.
Yes.
Wow, an honor and a blessing that is to
Well,
help somebody.
and just to your point, like integrity, if I further look at it, it to me also means, yeah, I'm standing in the light. I'm not hiding anything in the shadows or darkness,
Yeah.
and truly being whole and complete and lacking nothing.
Yeah.
And when you can be that way, that's how you show up authentically.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that authenticity is that that's it's kind of rare, but it's also it's absolutely something that I strive for, is to be authentically who I am. And I kind of can't help it. um I'm so blessed that way.
Yes.
And yeah, so anywho,
I love it. I
well,
love it.
I know you are busy. You have I'm sure you have patience, and I can't even tell you how much I've enjoyed this conversation.
Oh yeah, me too. This is fantastic.
I
It's nice just to get on and to be able to rap out about things. And my gosh, I feel very blessed to be where I'm at today, because
Me
it was
too.
not always this way at all.
Right.
At all.
Absolutely.
It was and for those of you guys, I just wanted to share one thing. For those of you who are listening, and you maybe are going through some dark times. We've
Hmm.
all been through some dark times. You know, if you were to look at where I'm at today, you might think, oh gosh, he's made it, he's successful, and you know, it must be nice to have it easy. And
Hmm.
the thing that I'll share with you is not too long ago, all just even back to 2016, I was in a very dark place.
Yeah.
Like I was drinking every single day, and the way that I was just destroying my body, I was
Hmm.
disconnected at home with my wife and my kids. I had no relationship with God. Um, I was out of shape, and obviously alcohol was destroying my body every day.
Yeah.
And at that point, if I would have continued down that road, I would have been headed down the road toward divorce number two, and I would have been racking
Hmm.
them up, you know. And I realized that, you know, something needed to shift and change.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to make changes. I hired coaches. I think coaches and mentors are so important. I'll always have a coach or a
Hmm.
mentor in my life, because when I did that, then I started to apply what they taught me every day, and life started to shift dramatically.
Wow.
So my whole point in this conversation of this part is that if life's not necessarily going where you want, go back
Hmm.
to like the beginning of our conversation, is just get honest with yourself first,
Yeah.
and then look at, hey, do I have the opportunity to work with somebody who has at least maybe been where I've been,
Hmm.
that can show me and guide me out of this, or that
Yeah.
can at least give me the tools to support me. And
Yeah.
that's what, you know, I think being a good coach and mentor is about, is looking at, you know, I don't want to create somebody that's dependent upon me. I want to give them the tools to then start to learn that and leverage it for themselves, and get to a point of where they can tap into that voice that we talked about inside
Yes.
of them so much that that becomes their guiding factor.
Yep. Yeah, we're the
Now,
mama birds, right? We feed them, and then
yeah,
we gotta, they get out the nest and then they fly on their own.
that's right. You
Oh,
know, I'm a firm believer in that. Like, you know, let's get you to the point of where you're able to hear the voice inside of you so clearly that you create clarity in your life, which I believe is a modern day currency, to have clarity. Now,
yep.
when you have clarity, then you can approach things with a lot more certainty. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we're very much so after on our way to looking at creating our own freedom.
Amazing. Um, Thank you so much for making the time to get on with me this morning. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I really, really appreciate you.
Elizabeth, thank you. I appreciated having the opportunity to be on here and just sharing a little bit. Absolutely. My pleasure.